Thank you all for coming to Big Arts tonight. I would like to start off by thanking those cast members for taking the time to be interviewed by David. Thank you also to Paul and Valerie Roshberg of Sanibel Art and Frame for displaying the artwork for the auction that accompanies this documentary. And thanks to Richard Johnson and Bailey's for always being so generous, donating the food and drinks for the reception afterwards. I met David Carter in 2008 when I sold his condo. In that condo, I saw an Emmy Award for the first time. As I was admiring the award, David said, "Actually, Eric, I have 7 of them." About a year ago, we were reunited when David asked me if I would sponsor one of his projects. He said he wanted to do a documentary about kids growing up on Sanibel, and he said he thought I was the perfect match for this project because I have 2 kids growing up on Sanibel, and I am very involved in the community. Mary Ellen and I chose to give up our careers in Baltimore to move here so that our kids could grow up on this small barrier island. So in 2001, when Darby was 4 and John was 2, we packed up and moved to Sanibel. Mary Ellen and I often wonder what the kids will remember about their childhood on Sanibel when they move away to college. We hope they will remember growing up with dolphin and manatees in their backyard. We hope they will remember when Dick Mensch brought the newborn deer from Periwinkle Park to our front door just so the kids could see it. We hope Darby remembers hitting her first home run for the Sanibel Red Team against the dreaded Sanibel Pink Team at the Sanibel Little League. We hope John remembers throwing his first touchdown to his buddy Joey Olino under the Friday night lights at the Sanibel Flag Football League. We hope they remember landing their first tarpon or catching redfish with Captain Ozzie Fisher. And we really hope they remember the time Tom Euler called us early one morning to watch the turtles coming out of their shells and make this seemingly endless journey from the dunes to the water and through the waves. Our stories could go on forever, and I'm sure each of you could write your own book of stories about your families growing up on Sanibel. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So tonight, we are privileged to see a picture, a documentary of kids spanning 4 generations telling their stories of growing up on Sanibel. What is very interesting to me is that while the years change and the people change, the stories are all very similar. Sanibel is truly a special place. So sit back, relax, and enjoy David Carter's Growing Up on Sanibel.
talking baseball. Klazuski, Campanella talking baseball. The man and Bobby Fella, the Scooter, the Barber and the Nuke. They knew 'em all from Boston to Dubuque, especially Willie, Mickey and the Duke.
Baseball has been a big part of my life. I started when I was about 3, playing t-ball in Rochester, New York. And then when I moved down here, I played a couple of years on this field with the pitching machine. And then I moved up to the majors, and I played here. After I graduated from Sanibel school, I went out into Fort Myers High School. We were portraying the players that played in Ashland, Kentucky many years ago. And me and my dad were lucky enough to go up to Ashland to see the premiere. I got to wear one guy's jersey. I was portraying him, and I met him at the premiere. When I moved here in 1st grade, I basically spent my entire childhood living on Sanibel, living on a small little island. And I had my select group of friends, but playing baseball really helped me meet a lot of new people and really helped me transition into high school. Without baseball, high school would be a lot different because I wouldn't have the friends I have right now.
Well, I spent a lot of time here when I was going to school in Sanibel. When I came here in 1994, I went to Sanibel Elementary, and I guess the teachers in the school were pretty lucky that their school was where it is. And we used to come here all the time. We'd have little classes in the classroom, and we'd walk around on the trails and see the different kinds of birds and other kind of wildlife and trees, a lot of trees. to think back and say, man, you know, I was really lucky. I really had a unique experience growing up, and I think that SCCF helped provide that to me, as well as Ding Darling and Tarpon Bay. They're special places, they really are. We do things like, what was it, Junior Naturalists, I believe is what it was called, where we'd have classroom time at Sanibel Elementary, and we'd go over the different types of shells and the different types of wildlife that one would find at SCCF or on the island. And we'd come out here and we'd look for those, and we'd have little log books, and we'd kind of, I guess, do scavenger hunts and things like that. And you know, you'd try and find the scarlet ibis, which, well, nobody found the scarlet ibis, but you know, the roseate spoonbill, or the white pelicans, the brown pelicans, and they'd teach us about the migratory patterns of these birds. What did it teach me? And how did it, well, I think it gave me an appreciation for, you know, conservation and maintaining nature, maintaining, you know, what we have here. And my girlfriend at the time and I weren't, you know, seeing eye to eye. And instead of going to homecoming, we had a dance at homecoming. I came out here to Bowman's Beach, and it was probably 55 degrees, and went surfing by myself, you know, full wetsuit, you know, being out by myself in the Gulf off of Sanibel and Captiva. Gave me an experience and an appreciation for Sanibel and Captiva that, you know, I don't think you get when you come, when you go to the high school dance, you know. But a lot of kids for prom and big school functions like that, milestone school functions, would go, you know, a lot of them would go to Fort Myers Beach, or they go to someone's house in town, and, you know, maybe their parents were a little lax with drinking and stuff like that, so they'd go and they'd have a party and stuff like that. But for us, my group of friends, we thought it would be way cooler to go up to Clam Bayou and try and you know, and camp out there all night. So we went to, we had prom in Fort Myers, and then we all hopped in their cars and drove all the way up, and this is like, you know, 10, 11 o'clock at night, drove all the way up to the Lazy parking lot and got all our tents and, you know, wood and stuff like that, and trudged I guess a mile down the beach towards Bowman's, but where the dead trees are, where the bayou actually is, and build a fire and set up our tents, and we brought fishing poles and, you know, tried to catch fish, which we didn't, we were lousy at it, but I mean, I thought it was pretty neat, you know, that this group of people that I knew that were my age had the same kind of appreciation for Sanibel, being outdoors and the Gulf that I did. And I was lucky in that respect, very lucky. But I'll never forget that.
Soccer here on Sanibel has been going on for over 20 years, and it's really real reason for soccer here on Sanibel is to teach kids the joy of the game. It's not really about winning or losing, it's more about participating with your friends, the kids you go to school with, here locally on the island. AJ, remember the pass! Pass! You gotta go away from this pack. You're all trying to do it. You can go right in the middle and can pass it to you. Okay?
Come on, Johnny!
Same team! Pass it to her! And we have about 180 kids sign up every year from 4 years old to 14 years old, and it's really an enjoyable experience.
It seemed a lot bigger back then. It was 1958, and my twin brother Mark and I started in second grade, and my sister was in sixth grade, so she was one of the big kids that got one of the big desks. And it was just a far cry from where we had come from. I had gone to first grade in school in Maryland, so it was a huge school, and here we were coming to this little tiny school that had, I believe at the time, I think we had 28 children that were in school at that time. So we helped, I think there were 25, and then the McQuades showed up, so then it became 28. And in the morning we would all get together and have our little sing-along and our welcome, and then there was a little addition to this old schoolhouse, and the first, second, and third graders would go over to the addition, and then the older children would be in here. And the teacher would very quietly shift from room to room to do her instruction. And she was very adept at it. Her name was Miss Nancy McCann. And she definitely ruled the roost. There was no one that crossed her. She wasn't a large woman at all. She was almost bird-like. But if you were disruptive, your name would go on the blackboard and you wouldn't go out at recess. And if you were disruptive again, there would be a check mark next to your name, and there would be 2 days that you didn't go out to recess. And so she was very successful at what she did. And then my brother and I and the other children went to Cypress Lake Middle School after that. And that was huge. You know, I kind of crept around for about a year until I got acclimated, but it was all fun. It's funny, I think back on the kids who were here at that time, and they've all done really well. You know, you think about one teacher teaching 6 different grade levels, and I just think about the kids that are now, you know, they're working amazing jobs as police chiefs and, you know, working for the government and artists, and it made no difference if you were at a big school or a small school. It just seems like the kids just went out there and did what they were meant to do. She did a good job. Amazing.
Well, I became interested when I first went to France when I was little, probably about like 4 years old even. I flew on the airplanes and I really found it interesting how this like 50-ton things can just get up into the air. So I really enjoyed the airplane ride. 7 years old, I got a flight simulator because I got more interested.
Eden here is one of our youngest flight students. He started about a year ago here, and he comes in, about every month, a couple times a month or so. I've seen a lot of good progression. The great thing about him is he's a really good student because he comes in prepared. Each time he does his homework before, he has an objective to come in, and you can really see the passion and the motivation in him.
I really love flying over Sanibel because I can look down and see where I live. When I was little, I could go out in my backyard and look up at the planes on approach to RSW.
Page Tower, 43 mile final, runway final.
Final runway 5. Tower staff 17223, West touch and go at runway 5, information 5. 10 miles to the southwest.
Skyhawk 17223 Page Tower, enter the straight in runway 5, report a 4 mile final.
4 mile final, 17223.
And it was a training exercise out by the Sanibel Island area. We went up, we flew over about 2,000 feet, and we did some slow flights, some different maneuvers in the air. And our main focus was when we came back, we practiced Eden's landings. We did some touch and goes. He did a really good job. It was crosswind landings, meaning the wind is not directly down the runway, so there's a little bit of angle, so it made it a little bit more difficult, but he did a very nice job on it today.
I was 11 years old when we moved to Sanibel. My two sisters, Carrie and Lisa, my two older sisters, and my dad ran a hotel, so we were either helping out at the hotel if we weren't at school, that type of thing, and playing in the water, going fishing, or whatever else was going on around. A lot of us island kids rode in together, and we left at dusk, about 6:30 in the morning. We got back about 6:30 at night, so we got to know each other really well. All the island kids rode together all day, so it was kind of a little family on the bus all day as we traveled to school and then traveled back from school at the end of the day. Collecting coconuts or playing on the beach with shells or you know, that type of thing, or riding our bikes around the island and that type of thing. You know, maybe pool hopping as a kid. You would go to another hotel and hop in the pool or something like that. That'd be kind of fun. Meet your buddies there and do that kind of thing. So that was something that wasn't causing any trouble. It was a lot of fun. Started into windsurfing by accident. My parents were running a hotel on Sanibel, and somebody came and brought a windsurfer and was nice enough to let me try it. and didn't do very well, but was excited about the sport, and followed up on it after they left, and just started getting into it, started doing it every day. And down the street was a friend of ours that had a windsurfer, so he ran a hotel called the Snook Motel, Bruce Cochran, and he was nice enough to kind of show us a little bit more of what was going on. We kind of didn't know anything about the wind and all that type of thing, so he kind of helped us out, and just progressed along. Went off to school, Florida State. Pursue this windsurfing career, and so I did, and 12 years later in the sport, 6 years on the team as an athlete, and won 2 bronze medals at the World Championships, and was #1 in the nation for 3 years in a row, so some pretty good success, and then was lucky enough to be the Olympic coach in 1996. My backdrop is where I worked every day to practice my skills. So I spent a lot of time on this causeway, either racing or practicing. So there's really no other place in the United States that I would think that I like to do windsurfing than other than Sanibel Island. So it's been a pretty big blessing for me to be raised here and get into windsurfing here on Sanibel.
We are part of the Sanibel Flag Football League, and it's been a really great season so far. It's been a legacy that's been carrying on for about 9 years now. We took over, Tim Drobnik and I took over for Eric Pfeifer, who's been a commissioner for quite a while. He's done a wonderful job, and our goal is to do it for the community, for the kids, and to really, show some island spirit. And what we want to do is have something that we can leave the kids with to remember, kind of like what we were doing when we were kids. And our league is about 150 kids strong. We have strong participation for the parents, and our goal is to really make it very old school, very, kind of, the way it was when we were growing up, the snack shack, and, having just really a community feel. So right now we have approximately 15 teams, and we have sponsors from all over the island, and we have a wonderful game going on. Normally we have our games on Friday night to make it Friday Night Lights. But it's been a wonderful experience, and hopefully we can continue it in the future.
I was 10, and my sister was 9, and my brother was just born, a couple years old. They said, we're thinking about moving to an island off the coast of Florida. The first thing I did was run to my room. I couldn't Google it back then, so I got the globe out, and they said the west coast of Florida, and I found where I thought Sanibel Island would be, and that was the first time I heard we might go. And then finally the decision was made in July of '72 that we were going to move, and we got here in August of '72. My dad was the executive director of the Metropolitan Builders Association of Milwaukee, and my mom hated the cold. So she was really the driving force behind the decision to come to Sanibel. Us kids were young enough that it didn't affect us that much, and I didn't know what I was going to get myself into, but when I got here, I said, this isn't too bad. Well, the first friend I ever made on Sanibel Island was Eric Vartdal, and this is the Vartdal house where they've lived, I think, since 1970 or so. My mom and dad made sure that I found some friends quickly, and they found out there was a family from Minnesota that had moved down a couple of years before, and they said they've got a son named Eric and a son named Brett that was about my age, and so probably we got down here in August of '72, and within the first few days I was over here playing with Eric and Brett and meeting them for the first time. And this is special because it was the first taste of the life that I was about to lead. The boat, the canal, the access to the water, and Eric taught me everything I knew or needed to know about fishing and fish, and I couldn't stand fish at the time, but he taught me how to eat it, and he was just excellent at all those things. So I just thought that this was a place that made sense to film, because it was really my childhood and my teenage years and going into college were spent here a ton. The ones with Eric and I are special because when we went fishing out off of Fort Myers Beach with Captain Roy Leonard, I think his name was, and it was just Eric and I and my sister and my little brother and my mom and dad went out, and it's special because Eric passed away in 2009, and I had to think about, what my life would have been like without him, and that's one reason I'm here, is because he made my childhood on Sanibel something special. They had an airstrip that small planes would fly in off of Cassiabel Road. Cassiabel Road at the time was a dirt road, and so one of the neat things as kids we would do is we would see little Cessnas flying into the airstrip. And my job at the resort was really to take people's luggage into their units, and I was a garbage hauler, and one time I took this gentleman's luggage in after he had flown in on the airstrip, and he was reaching in his wallet and he had no money, and he said, "I tell you what, how about for your tip, I take you up in the airplane because I want to practice landing on this little runway again." So lo and behold, didn't tell a soul, and I got in that airplane and we flew around the island. It was my first time I really saw Sanibel from the air and understood, wow, I live on that island, and that was another neat thing about living on the island, is that experience, and then having a boat as a kid to be able to drive around the island, because it sort of proved that you lived there. And Eric Fartdahl had a boat, a little 10-footer with a 3-horsepower engine on it that we used when we were 11, 12 years old, and then I got a boat when I was 13, and those were our cars until we got cars, and we used them just like cars. We would take off and go to Little Shell Island for hamburgers or Cabbage Key, the parents back then, they thought it was nothing. And CB radios were getting big then, so we would communicate with our parents by CB and tell them where we were, and that was no problem at all. So we camped and swam and fished and boated and inner tubed and jet skied and water skied, and that was our growing up.
I was about in the 6th grade when I first started coming here, and the reason we came here was my grandmother, Peg Parcells, and her husband Bob came here to the island, and they worked with Priscilla Murphy Realty, and they told my parents, hey, you need to get here fast and buy up some property, because this is a good place to live. We would come here and visit, and then we decided, well, we better hurry up and get something. So we bought the property off Donax, built our house, and we built a duplex so that we could rent part of it right after the causeway we moved here. I do know that there was probably about 30 of us kids, and we all hung out together and all had a great time. Shelling at low tide, you went water skiing, you went fishing. I learned how to scuba dive when I was here, so I was always doing that. We'd go up to Boca Grande and go scuba diving. Boating was always something to do. Most people, I guess maybe in a city, go for a drive. We always went out in the boat, or you went out to the beach. Swimming, just anything that you would possibly do on vacation, you did it every day. It was your normal activity. And softball, yes, Sanibel decided to have a little softball team with a lot of us kids. And so I played softball. I played left field and third base. And it was great, and all of us island kids got out there and had a great time. People dream of living on an island. and wonder what it's like. And I just think that I'm very privileged to have done that and be able to live that life. One of the things my family liked to do was to rent a sailboat. My dad was a sailor, and so he liked to rent a sailboat, and we would go down to the Keys and sail around the Keys. And I've always loved pets and birds, and when we lived on Donak Street, I had 2 red-shouldered hawks that would always come around. They'd always hang around and crying and squeaking all the time. And I thought one time, well, maybe I could train these things. They seem to like me, so I got some chicken gizzards and chicken necks, and I got myself a glove, and I started going out on the back porch and holding my hand out to see if they'd come down. Well, sure enough, that thing came right down immediately. Well, that was well and good, and I had a really good time doing that. But then they had babies, and then the babies wanted to come down, and I had a clothesline out there at the time. Every time I go out to hang clothes, they would just dive bomb me wanting something to eat. Sanibel not only had a baseball league, but we also had a bowling league that we would all go and play at night over at Beach Bowl. And that was good, you know, a couple organized activities, because we really didn't have that much over here. The theater hadn't been built yet, you know, other than boating, fishing, shelling, you know, and softball, there wasn't that much for the kids to do other than gather. And that's not to say we didn't have some great beach parties. I mean, back then you were allowed to have a bonfire, like a beach fire. And so it was kind of magical when you're a kid to be able to do that every time you wanted to. Most kids would go in a parking lot maybe or to a football game, and, you know, we went to the beach and had beach parties and bonfires, and it was cool.
I decided to volunteer at Fish because at first I was thinking of putting it on my college resume, but then I decided I was doing it to like help my community and give back. And also you need community service hours at our school. You need them in middle school, but I started in 5th grade. Fish helps a lot of people, and not most of the organizations help other people. In the pantry, we have to check the expiration date to make sure it's still good. And we have to put the cans and bags in a certain order so that's presentable for the people, to the people that come in. We also have to make it easy for people to find what they need so that they can go in and out faster. I try to make the shelves as nice as they would find in a grocery store.
No, Carson is the, he's the ideal young man who you'd like to have next door so you could see him, you know, year in and year out and watch him grow. We've known him for 2 years, and we are already watching him grow. He's very articulate, he's very willing. He says it the way it is. I know he hates to break down boxes. It's one of his least favorite things.
It's pretty fun because you get to like stomp on boxes.
But he does it with graciousness, and he does, there's dozens of different things that Carson has done while he's worked with us. It's never the same.
It makes me feel like I'm helping other people by working here.
I moved to Sanibel when I was maybe 6. I was in the 2nd grade, so I was like 7 or 8. And then when my brother came, we didn't have a big enough house, so we moved down here to the West End, which is actually a little more in touch with wildlife since it's closer to beaches. And there's a lot more plant species and things out here because it's less inhabited and there are less hotels and things down this way. So it's a little more in tune with nature, and that's fascinating. I love it out here. I've loved animals since I was tiny, and Sanibel, when we moved here, has just kind of helped that, escalate. And since it's just so diverse here and there's so many different animals and plant species, and it's just fascinating to have all this around you. And it's hard not to love animals when you live here. We'd brought, patients and injured wildlife into Crow previously, living on Sanibel. They had an ad in the newspaper that they needed volunteers to help in their clinic, and I thought that was a wonderful opportunity, which is super connected to those animals and that wildlife that's found here. But volunteering at Crow has kind of given me a little more direction in my life, and I've realized that, becoming a vet is something that I'm a lot more interested in now than I was previously, so that's good. Yeah, well, I work in the baby room, which is in the clinic upstairs, and I feed and I clean cages and I take care of the baby animals and, look at their records and things. I've just kind of upgraded cameras since I was little. Like, I had a little tiny digital Nikon, and then as I got more into it, I would for birthday presents and things, be given cameras with, like a detachable lens, and I'd kind of gradually upgrade. I just kind of bike around the island and shoot stuff and edit them and put them on my website, which I have going. I also submit some things to National Geographic for their My Shot organization, and there's just a ton of people internationally that just submit photos, and you can just search through other photography fanatic work, and it's really cool to see, and they can give you input on your work, and you can, comment on theirs, and it's really helpful. Over the summer, I had this really awesome routine. I had it really well planned out. I'd wake up pretty early in the mornings at 7 o'clock. Then I'd bike over to the rec center, which is only 3 or 4 miles away from my house, which is super convenient. And I'd go in, I'd work out and such. And then I'd change and I'd go over to Crow and spend the day working there. So it was great.
Alex is one of the best volunteers. She is conscientious, knowledgeable. She knows just how to feed the baby birds. She's an artist at it.
Alex and I have been working together all summer, and it's been probably my favorite summer that I've had volunteering here. I've been here for about 3 years. And we just went through a whole baby bird season. It was very, very busy, and Alex and I were a team, and it was really great. And Alex is so mature for her age. She's a natural.
Well, living on Sanibel has kind of really given me the opportunity to get that much closer to nature and the wildlife, because you just wake up and it's all around you, and it's really hard to not get involved with it. So since I have this passion for animals, Crow has really helped me out a lot there. It's given me some more direction in my life and kind of inspired me to get more involved in, veterinary studies.
So we come in to the beginning of the school year with the students preparing to start class with the musical productions, and we do 2 musicals a year. The students come into class with a lot of experience. Then there's some other students who come in with no experience. We start with the script book, and the students begin to learn their lines.
Double check some of our set pieces, make sure that we're all good to go here. I need just a couple of set designers up on stage.
Eventually, after practicing and moving through the script book, we begin rehearsals on choreography. Here's a couple of clips from our musical rehearsals. Keep these in mind.
There you go.
And here's another one.
I only have one dream in life, there's very little to it. To own one sake of lifelong gum and all lifelong to chew it.
After weeks of rehearsal, we are finally at the opening night, and the excitement begins.
I'll be retiring to make way for someone new. Some bright spark I'll be hiring, but who?
But who?
Oh, and those 2 rehearsals I told you to remember? And this solo by Courtney Maw.
Gum. I only have one dream in life, there's very little to it. To own one sake of lifelong gum and all lifelong to chew it. I chew it all through childhood, I chew when I wed. If I survive to 95, I'll chew it till I'm dead.
And then the grand finale. What the kids get out of this is a true, real-life experience.
Coming in front of the class for auditions and coming in front of the audience during the shows boosted my confidence levels and helped me to get over that fear. So now in high school we do performances often, and I feel like I walk out with more confidence every time. I've always been a pretty shy person, just like my sister. The performances have definitely helped me to have my own voice and definitely be heard a lot more.
Being in the musical productions actually becomes a family tradition.
It's made me much more outgoing, and I'm not as shy, and going into college interviews and stuff, I've never been nervous, and I think that all comes back to this, that I did on this stage.
I have noticed drastically how much I can talk like openly to a crowd, or like during class when I just have debates. I can tell that this has helped me in like who I am as a person and how I like talk out loud, and I'm not shy at all anymore.
When the students finish their musical productions in 8th grade, the last night is always very emotional for me because I may not see them very much again. But like I said, the most gratifying thing is that they come back. They come back to help in high school. They come back even when they're in college to see the musical productions, and they keep in touch with me. And I wouldn't change that for the world.
I didn't really have any ideas, and the only thing that came to mind was what I did on my science fair project in the 12-month water quality analysis, and I thought I wanted to take it to the next level and actually do something instead of just study it. I actually wanted to take action. So I came up with road signs, which are currently out, 7 of them on the island, and I thought they would be more visible and that would outreach a lot more people The idea of that was to do a frequency of message that I learned through a study, that frequency of message gets out to a lot more people that will change attitude and behaviors about the area. So all of the signs, the same logo is on every piece of literature, everything that I hand out, so that when you read my brochures and you read the sign, you'll be reminded each time you drive by to protect our waters. And that's where I got into my Eagle Project and scouting.
And I really found it intriguing that this kid, working on his Eagle Scout program, came up with an idea to basically protect our waters. And that is something that is almost unheard of these days in kids his age. After I did, some research on Kenny's project and stuff, I received an award from Starbright, which is one of my sponsors for the show, for our Project Snooked, and it's basically the Blue Marble Award is someone that does something to protect the environment or enhance the environment. And it took me almost a year and a half to find somebody that was, what's the word I'm looking for, capable or deserving in receiving the Blue Marble Award. And it's just an award that Starbright gives away to an individual that helps protect the environment. And Kenny's project is definitely that.
And then we moved here to Yachtsman. I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and ever since then I've always been out on the dock, and I got a small little bass boat when I was about 13, and I would take it around the canals and fish many of the spots in the canals. It's so nice being out of the water like this. It's just such like a relaxant. It takes you away from everything else busy going on, whether it's school or work. I like to come back here because it's really important. As part of me growing up, it was definitely beneficial because I got more experience on the water, and I became close with this area, and especially this river in here. I've fished many times, and I've caught all sorts of stuff. My first tarpon I actually caught back down in that canal, and it's just important to me.
I would take dance lessons at the Duggars. So the Duggars is still off West Gulf Drive, and of course Mr. and Mrs. Duggar are long gone, but they were performers out of St. Louis, I believe, and had a dance studio there. So myself and a few other girls, we'd go to Mr. Duggar's and he'd teach us soft shoe and tap, whatever. So when the community center, they were trying to promote the community center back then from what I remember, because what do they do with the teenagers? What do they do with the kids? There I was taking tap and soft shoe. We had to do something. So my grandfather probably came up with the idea to do this show. He knew Miriam Chapman and her husband, and I don't remember his name, but we would go to their house, and Miriam, she's the one that wrote the song. and I can't sing anymore, but I'll try. But I think there was like some soft shoe dancing in there with it. Okay. So it went, Sanibel, you're our new fashion city. Life is casual and breezy in the setting of sunshine. I can see that the snowbirds are just like me, for they travel so far to be where the sun warms the sand. And Sanibel, you're our new fashion city. Life is casual and breezy, setting us in your spell. Something like that. You're our own Sanibel. Well, you know, it was funny because, I mean, it was pretty packed in here, and you talk about how the kids, oh, they don't want to be in front of, you know, it's embarrassing. And I remember having a little bit of that because, you know, we had just moved here, and, you know, I was trying to make new friends, and here I am doing this a little bit corny thing, but, I mean, it was fun, and at the same time, I felt proud because, you know, it was a big thing. This was a city, and I got to sing and be up there, and, you know, I loved my grandfather.
The store, the one we're referring to that's in the village, we went down there and we used to play. In the back room, while there were 100-pound sacks of chicken and mule feed, and we used to love to get on those and play because they were soft. And once in a while, Daddy could get some work out of us. He used to say that he had one boy, we get a little work, 2, not too bad, 3, nothing. Partially in farming business, and Daddy had a nice garden at home, and we had a big yard, and so that was one of the things we also did was take care of the yard and whatnot. When we worked when he was looking at us anyway. Well, the one I tell the most is that we had one teacher, one door, one desk. Well, teachers did, one closet, one pencil sharpener, one stove, but we had two whole outhouses. I mean, it was one room, 8 grades. The most we ever had in it, I think, was about 32 or 33 people, and that was because of some of the snowbirds, one of which I married later. We had a different teacher every year except once. When I was there, and later on, the last teacher that we had there stayed for a while. The older kids worked with the younger kids, and Sam will tell you he learned more that way than he did otherwise. But really, we got a good age. I went to a tough prep school. I didn't have any real trouble. I was a little lazy, but if you get over that business, well, I did very well. And it was the background we got here in this one-room schoolhouse with one teacher. When I was 14, my mother died, and I went away to prep school. So for the next 8 years, I was only here in the summertime and Christmas vacation for a couple of weeks. At that time, I had never spent a night that I can think of away from either my mother, father, grandmother, or aunt. And I never got homesick. I missed home, but I never got this business of, I enjoyed where I was. Yeah.
Sanibel is just this great little community, and there's so many aspects of it. Like, you have so many wonderful people here, and there are so many different facilities like the rec center and like Crow, and it's just so in tune with wildlife, and it's home. It's a great place to live.
This place I figured out real early on. We've got so many people that come down here from all over the world for a week at a time, you know, and vacation here. And I figured it out early on as a kid. Why would I leave? And so I am the last, you know, member of the family that actually lives on the island, and that was really a conscious thought in the beginning, saying I'm not leaving here. Why would I? So, and I'm glad I stayed.
It's just important to me because if it wasn't for these canals and if it weren't for that, I wouldn't be where I am today with my Eagle Project, and I wouldn't be an avid fisherman as I am today, and all the people I've met. And it's just really, that's why this is an important area to me.
You'd feel an emotion that you really kind of touched you deeper than anything you'd feel in the material world, you know? I don't know, it's a love that's hard to put your finger on. It's hard for me to describe anyway, but I love it here.